Oh, all right. Well, let's get going. So, season 4, episode 6, bar and platform. So, let's get straight into it. We made the delineation between actually bar and platform deliberately because one thing we've kind of realized as kind of developing out the platform is all the infrastructure that powers everything that gets built on top, and bar is the first product that really utilizes the platform. And a lot of our roadmap over the past few months can be categorized with the fact that we've been building out the platform, because without it, we haven't been able to get to bar. But now the fact that the platform's in a pretty stable state, we can actually start working on the more interesting, fun apps and integrations. So that's just a bit of delineation that I'd like to make, and it'll be terminology that we'll be using moving forward as well. So in terms of bar, we've got the contract. Contracts are more or less done. So they're in a point now where we can start getting them on the testnet. The credit score is in a great shape where the user experience is what we want it to be, and the engineering pipelines to make that work are looking really great. And then we've got the front end UI work done with a lot of the stuff being wired into the contract. So all that to say that the integration to bring all the individual stacks of front end, back end data and risk are being pulled together, which is really, really exciting to see come through. And with that basically, once that integration's done, we hit that key milestone to the alpha, assuming that Merkle root is being published on mainnet. The other bits that are kind of in periphery are working on the emission/incentives white paper. So this basically will outline how users of the bar platform, including liquidity providers, will be incentivized. This will be more insight as time goes on. And then the other bit is like defining specs for the beta. So once the alpha is done, we're going to move to the beta, and the alpha is all about the technical feasibility of the system. The beta is about the risk feasibility, and the beta is most likely where a lot of community members will be able to get involved and start borrowing on the real deal. So that's it on the bar side. In terms of platform, we're making a shift to like going a lot deeper into scores and thinking about how do we offer clear benefits to protocols and users if they're developing these scores, and how can we get it integrated and socialized within their ecosystems to actually be widely used. So that's something that like we're working on more from like a business and sales perspective. The other bit is like the platform, we are now confident in our ability to scale many scores, which is nice to have for us building on this infrastructure increasingly. We've also been starting to receive some interesting inbounds around wanting to use the existing scores we have for certain airdrop criteria. So it's still early days, but that's definitely an interesting avenue we're seeing on the platform side. And then, as I mentioned before, distinguishing between the platform versus the product in the way that we think about our communications and roadmap. Miscellaneous, targeting roughly next week for the current holders release. There's just some stuff around the comms and parameters that we're still working through, but that is not been forgotten and still coming to life soon. In terms of other things, shout outs, I just want to shout out the Titan team. They've been working really hard over the past few weeks and juggling everything at once. So want to give that a shout out and appreciation, and also hopefully things will be a lot more calmer moving forward. The other shout out is to Hugh, outlining how the platform works and presenting it in this easy to share deck with partners has been really useful. And it's also helped to clarify certain elements of our thinking as a team. So shout out there. And main challenge is working through the risk stuff for the beta stage of borrow. So this is when we've got more money on the line and there's more variables in play. So that's kind of one of the key challenges for the upcoming week. That's about it on my end. I'll pass it over to Kyle for engineering.
Cool, thanks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So last week, lots of stuff lots of things. Like Kermit mentioned, we improved our infrastructure, and now we sync more efficiently with the data team. We can have lots and lots and lots of scores of lots of different types, which is really cool. We finished the borrow UI skeleton. We also got the credit score UI skeleton finishing up this week. We also found a lot of edge cases in our borrow contracts, which we're able to write tests for and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, lots of deep code last week. This week, we want to deploy all these contracts on our test nets. Then we're going to integrate everything together. So integrate the contracts with the UI, and integrate that with the backend, integrate that with the front end, with the data and all those interconnected webs. We're also going to be updating the passports claim metric on our website. More to come on that. We also stabilized some fires, and the only reason we knew there were fires was because we have pretty decent monitoring. So that's good news. And we also want to turn on the multi-sig. Obviously, we need to have it for the borrow contracts to be working on testnets. So shoutouts to Gabe. He worked through the entire weekend on all the contracts. I'm seeing him go crazy, but he also loves the process. So big shout out to him. And also Alex. He was really a machine last week on all the infrastructure changes. So big shout out to those guys. And challenges. So borrow contracts last 10%. So that's all the small little edge cases. The last little stretch is closing all those guys out. And then obviously integrations, right? We got a lot of pieces, got to connect them all together. That's everything for engineering. Passing it over to Kale.
All right, GM. So, been some crazy few weeks for us. What's been going on? So, credit score, we got an internal release of that. So Stuart's been working super hard. He's been fully focused on that. He's got all the pieces together. We're publishing stuff for like all the backend infrastructure, so it can all be pulled through to the Merkle root updater and things like that. So it's very cool. There's still some remaining work on that, in particular some data validation we need to do, and just kind of doing some last kind of monitoring pieces on the credit score. Our custom score infrastructure, it's all been built. It was orchestration, CI/CD last week, so just some continued work there, but it's already starting to be used with the credit score and things like that. We released a couple custom scores, and we did more risk modeling. For this week, one of the big tasks is starting to calibrate some of the risk models. So in particular, what we're looking at this week is price path modeling and just making sure that the volatility, the trends, the cyclicality of the whole thing looks and feels like the assets we want to collateralize. And one thing that also needs to be done is synchronizing credit score updates with the Merkle root updater. So what happens is on our end, we create a credit score, but that doesn't get updated for some X amount of time. We need to synchronize those events to make sure that no one gets penalized if they are acting one way before a score update and another way after a score update. Shout out. Some of the big shout outs, like Kerman did the shout out, I'll do it again, is the data folk. They've been working super hard. I see lots of late nights. I see lots of conversations, lots of weekend work, and they're all really pushing super hard to get everything together for the borrow product. Kerman, thank you. You're a calming force in a sea of chaos. It's very nice having a calm entity around to kind of calm everything. And Hugh, awesome job pushing the white paper together. It's looking awesome. Lots and lots of content there, especially when you look at other white papers in the industry. So it's a massive one. Some of the biggest challenges for us is risk modeling. It's just that work is so hard to define and so hard to scope. So it's very challenging getting accurate estimates, which obviously impacts the rest of the DAO. So just working through that, figuring out how to estimate things better. And then lastly, is just consolidating and rallying the squad around all this risk monitoring. It's super difficult, but if we all focus and do it, we will actually build a system that should blow the competition out of the water. So I'm super excited about that. That's it. Over to Liam with BD.
GM. So last week we did, last week we got almost 200 new passport users from some of the scores that we had published on Twitter, which was great. The Crypto Coven score specifically actually was a bit of a sleeper hit. We put it out, but then it started to get a lot of reshares after and brought a lot of people to the website, which was great. So this week, really, I mean, thematically, we're pivoting from these kind of, what we call them like shallow scores, where we're kind of like publishing them onto Twitter. There's not an integration, but people can kind of check their score and share it. We're now going, I think really we're going a lot deeper. So I'm sort of simplifying my focus and just developing as much context in, building and developing my existing relationships in the industry to ensure that, as we develop new scores, there's actually a clear integration opportunity. And it's not to say that all of the scores that we've existed are in vain. Quite the opposite, actually. We have people reaching out saying they want to kind of plug them together potentially and things like that. And it showcases the product. But yeah, it's going to be a lot more of a sort of Zen mode for me in Discord, building relationships, doing more classic, well, I wouldn't say classic, but like some sort of sales, and just keeping context on that all the time. I'm also prepping for an upcoming AMA, so we've got a partnership in the works. There's going to be some info around that on Twitter, and there's going to be some community AMAs, chance to win $500. So, I mean, stay tuned for this. Like, it's going to be pretty cool. The challenges we're working through is structuring the loyalty offering. So there was some discussions earlier around, how the platform can support like a loyalty program. So we're going to be developing a more opinionated framework around that to help projects implement it. And, getting the first set of integrations on that. Shout outs to Kerman and Hugh. We've started to do these sort of strategy jams, which have been really good in terms of just connecting our thinking, helping us sort of pivot and be more agile. It's really good, and I'm looking forward to continuing those sessions weekly or bi-weekly with Kerman and Hugh, because they're very valuable. That's everything from my end. I'm going to pass over to Hugh to talk about product and operations.
Thanks, Liam. Hey, everybody. So last week was team retreat planning. So we've got that to kind of a point where all of the folks who are coming from overseas are going to be getting their visas sorted this week. So that's all good. And then looking ahead, we'll be kind of like planning all the nitty-gritty details of that in the coming weeks. As mentioned, there's like a bit of product marketing work that's happened. So just thinking through the platform play of like, how do we go and present like the technology of ARCx as a opportunity for other protocols to tap into and create value. And really that value is essentially like, how do we personalize Web3 and how do we create like strong loyalty type programs within communities. So that's kind of been worked on over the last week. Massive feedback iteration on ARCx white paper. So there was some, this was shared with some close, I think, investors and close advisors. And we're basically kind of going through this process of, like incorporating their feedback and iterating on the paper. So that continued last week. And then the same deal with the Discord bot that we're speccing out. So that was last week. This week ahead, really going to focus on the second iteration of Borrow. So this one is going to be, as Kevin mentioned, thinking through like risk feasibility. There's also going to be some more features that will come out. And like a bit more kind of like UX stuff, but yeah, like at its core, it's going to be, really just validating the like risk and viability of it. So then beyond that, going deeper on score design. So this is going to be like in part with like work with Liam around how do we design like a really powerful score, go really deep, and then connect the benefits and the utility around it. So that kind of work is going to be done this week. Go to market for Borrow. How do we think about, the marketing, the communications, and all of the sort of like the work that sits around or outside of just the product launch. So some of the thinking there will be done this week. And then, as I mentioned, bookings for team retreat. Shout out Liam, great focus on bringing like the tech sales lens to a lot of this stuff. Like it turns out that we're not reinventing the wheel. You know, like turns out that big tech has figured it out. So I think it's really good to have that kind of expertise coming into the conversation. Looking forward to seeing that when we start, you know, getting deeper on these partner conversations. And then no challenges from my end. I think it's just a matter of heads down. So yeah, anyway, that's it from my end.
Cool, thanks you. Gonna jump over to some Q&As. So number one we had was, what is Dollar Kerman? So for context, back in March or May of 2020, I think it's 2020, yeah, I released a personal token called Kerman that was a token around myself, and as I launched ARC, 1% of the ARC supply goes to Kerman holders. So the process of enabling staking for Kerman holders is what a lot of that chatter is about. And then the second question we had was, other than organic growth, will there be any marketing efforts once BAR is released? The answer is yes, and that's exactly what we're brainstorming or going to be fleshing out more this week. The main avenues we see is like number one is like making sure all the information is present to people so they can understand what we're doing through the white paper. The second being around like the incentives, and then third is around any press / influencers that we want to get on board, but that's still being fleshed out. But to answer the question, yes, we will be marketing this. So yeah, that I think marks everything for today. Thank you all for tuning in, and catch you all next week. Goodbye.